Controversy continues to make headlines, and allegations of impropriety have been traded between former employees of the public broadcaster and the former interim board. Now, last week, board members resigned, fueling speculation that Matata Tsedu, Krish Naidu and Kanyisile Kweyama threw in the towel because of the security tender debacle. Joining me in studio is SABC Group Executive Human Resources Jonathan Tekiso and the corporation's legal representative at Werkman's attorneys, Sandile July. A very good evening to you both, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I think let me start with you, Mr. Tekiso. On Saturday, I spoke to you. You told me that in light of the sexual harassment debacle at the SABC as well, that a sixth employee would be suspended today. Has that happened?
Good evening, Griselda and the viewers. We can confirm that the employee we referred to on Saturday has indeed been suspended.
So this is the sixth employee now who's been suspended. You also spoke about 10 other individuals that might face the same fate as well. And you also spoke about a number of people who would be recommended to see through this process of the 10 who are allegedly involved in basically putting the lid on some of the complaints that have been brought across.
Quite correct. That process is underway, and I'm sure the viewers will recall we mentioned the fact that in order to ensure that there's impartiality and objectivity, that a batch of people would be appointed to assist the organization in terms of proceeding with those disciplinary inquiries. That process is underway in terms of the acquisition of those individuals. Yeah,
all right. Let's just leave that there for now and focus on the issues of the day. But breaking news here on the Full View that a sixth employee here at the SABC has been suspended on allegations of sexual harassment. Mr. Sandile July, you were the initiator in the disciplinary of two former SABC executives who spoke to the SABC yesterday and basically leveled damning allegations against the corporation, claiming that they were fired because they basically knew too much about the security tender here at the public broadcaster. When were these disciplinary hearings initiated against these two employees?
Firstly, I need to correct that they are not executives. They are both GMs. And I must also indicate that I'm not here to talk about the tender because there's no connection between the tender and the charges brought against these two employees. Mlawudzi, for instance, was charged on the 29th of May 2018, and then the disciplinary hearing commenced on the 23rd of July 2018. And the lady Ayanda Mkhize was charged on the 10th of July, and the disciplinary hearing proceeded on the 27th and 28th of August 2018.
Mr. Sandile July, while you speak about when these charges basically started, let's take a look at this clip by the two former employees of the SABC and what they had to say for their reasons, according to them, for being fired from the public broadcaster. Let's take a listen.
They're trumped up charges. If you have time, I'll make an example of one that is very ridiculous. That they said I should have formed the BEC committee. Now I'm suspended and charged by the CFO then. But if you look at the SABC's own SCM policy and procedures, it says the group executive member must propose names to me as the head of supply chain. And guess who was the responsible group executive member on one of the charges where I'm told or I'm charged that I did not form the bid evaluation committee? Is the very same person who suspended me, the acting CFO, is the very same person who should have given me a proposed names to either agree or disagree, and I find that in my charge sheet. So how was I going to play a ball? It was a tennis game. How was I going to play the ball back into my boss's court when he's holding the tennis ball in his hand?
Yes, I did sit for a disciplinary hearing, which was scheduled for the 27th and 28th of September. And then it was postponed to the 5th of November. But to my surprise, On the 5th of October, I got a letter from the SABC intending to dismiss me, and they dismissed me on the 18th of October.
Mr. Sadile July, these are trumped-up charges according to the former employees of the SABC.
I think we have to start from the scratch. The context of these charges, they come from the Portfolio Committee. You will recall in 2016 December, Portfolio Committee met doing the investigation on the administration of the SABC. On February 2017, there was a report from that committee, and somewhere in July 2017, there was an establishment of, the proclamation by the president to investigate the maladministration at SABC. These employees that are talking to you now, they are saying these are trumped charges. They themselves went to the SIU and have affidavits that have been made. The only affidavit that we don't have, and we don't know whether SIU does have, is the affidavit of Ms. Mkhize. But Mlaudzi made an affidavit somewhere in March in 2018, and on the basis of that affidavit, they were charged. And the basis of the charges are twofold. One, it is their own, is Mlaudzi's affidavit, of course implicating Mkhize's affidavit. And in addition to that, there is an AG report which says the tender in respect of Infonomics was irregular.
Okay, we'll get to Infonomics as well as Sekela Kabiso, the
Yes.
deal as well.
Yes.
But what these employees are essentially saying is that, you'd recall, core to what they've been mentioning is that at a particular board meeting, there were certain members of the former interim board who, when they recommended this is how the whole issue of the security tender comes in. I know you don't want to answer questions related to that, but these are the points that they're making. That you had a situation in a board meeting where they allege that Khanyisile Kweyama as well as Matata Tsedu had basically dismissed who they were recommending, the company that had scored the top points, and basically saying everything that took place after was because they knew too much. And in fact, one of the assertions that Ayanda Mkhize is making, she says, is that during the first sitting of the disciplinary hearing, she asked for documentations through her lawyer, which the SABC did not provide. And in actual fact, why did you not supply that documentation? Because she also requested documentation relating to the security tender, which, according to the minutes of that meeting, allegedly would show that Khanyisile Kweyama had basically said that there wasn't a situation where she should get the documents that she was being asked for.
Well, I won't know what happened in there. I'm not a board member, but I will talk about what I know. Indeed, the hearing took place on the 27th and 28th of August. There was a request before that for the documents, which were provided on the 24th of August. But there was insistence when we met again on the 27th, 26th and 27th of August that there were outstanding documents. And then they were finished, those documents, on the 6th of September. And on the 7th, we received further requests for documents. And in that further request, there was a request for documents which Mkhize knew that she had deleted from her own laptop. Because what we did, we asked for the laptop from SABC to be looked at by we are not computer experts. We took it to the experts. They looked at the documents.
But I'm sure you would agree with me, Ms. July, that the request for that documentation would also be on the basis that she wanted to know why she was being charged.
Yes.
Right? So that documentation obviously needed to be given to her, whether it is through her legal representation, so that she could prepare herself for the charges which that she was facing.
Two things. When you ask for documents, of course you have to ask for documents that are relevant to the charges. If you look at the charges that have been brought against Ms. Mkhize, they've got nothing to do with security. But let me answer the security specifically, because that document is one of the documents that we found that were deleted in the system. They were deleted. We found the computer was empty. So we raised this in the hearing. There was no denial that she did delete documents. Now you tell me you are provided with an equipment to do your job by SABC. You decide to delete everything from SABC's laptop. You are a GM special project. And when you provide SABC with a laptop, it's like you have never worked at SABC. Why should SABC trust you?
Unfortunately, Ayanda Mkhize is not here to respond to the allegations that you are making. Perhaps at a later stage she will. But some of the accusations is that the SABC was very selective in whom they were dealing with. Let me tell you the reason why I say this is because Ayanda Mkhize, amongst, of course, Mulawuti, is claiming that they were dealt with because of what they knew relating to the security tender. I'll ask you a question. You must remember that Ayanda Mkhize, in the position in which she was in, if we look at the issue relating to Sekela Xabiso, she was nothing but the recommender. They recommend, and there is someone who actually approves the contract. If we look at Sekela Xabiso as well as Infonomics, she would be the one to recommend, and then there is someone who approves the tender which is being awarded. Has the person who approved that tender also been investigated?
Well, I'm not going to answer in the manner in which you ask the question.
Mr. July,
but what I can tell
Selective, the accusation is that there is selective.
That's not true.
Because Ms. Mkhize is arguing that they were simply dealt with because they questioned the former members of the interim board about why they were questioning them when they brought the first bidder and gave that name. So they're simply, so in the issue relating to the charges, one of the charges against Ms. Mkhize related to Sekela Xabiso and the Infonomics deal. Is that correct?
Yes.
We're in agreement.
Yes.
So she, having recommended those two, she did not sign it off. Have you dealt with the person who approved that award?
Yes. Can I answer the question?
Please, sir.
They are not the only employees who have been charged. That is not true.
Have
one of the
those who approved? Yes.
Can you give me a chance?
Go ahead, sir.
One of the employees who was charged, who was the acting CFO, who signed two documents, one being a prepayment to Infonomics for 4.5 million, was charged, and when the time came for a disciplinary hearing, she resigned. Was
that the person who approved?
Yes.
Sekela and Infonomics?
I will tell you, it was the acting CFO who did that. Remember the issue of approval, the number of approvals that we are talking about. There's an approval of the business case,
yes,
which was approved by an employee who has since retired from SABC. And then there's an approval for the deviations, which was one of the employees resigned,
yes,
and the other employee retired. Right? And then there is the last part of it, the signing of the agreement. So the signing of the agreement was done, and that employee has since resigned also from SABC.
So
I'm not sure if you want me to mention names.
No, that's fine. But have all the individuals, the entire chain.
The entire chain, from the CFO to the initiator of the process. Starting from the person who called the first meeting,
yes,
that person was charged.
Let me come to you as well, Mr. Jonathan Tekiso. You have Mr. Simon Mulawuti now, who is taking the issue to the CCMA. He says he was unfairly dismissed. Is the SABC confident that it will be able to defend himself? Because he also makes the allegation saying that there was a sitting, for example, of a disciplinary hearing in which the SABC did not pitch, and no reasons were given for that. So he feels very aggrieved by the manner in which the SABC has dealt with the situation.
The issue really is the fact that first of all, he, Mr. Mulawuti, ought to have come to a disciplinary inquiry. He didn't pitch, and in fact, we were told that he was indisposed through his legal advisor, and through Vex months, we then postponed for a day the sitting, so that we can give him an opportunity to present the medical certificate. And the following day, the medical certificate was provided, but nowhere through the chairperson, nowhere in the medical certificate did it mention the fact that he was so indisposed that he could not even attend the hearing. And on that basis, the hearing proceeded. So, and then he was dismissed from the organization, and he referred the matter to the CCMA on two issues, essentially.
Yes.
The first one was an unfair suspension. The second one was an unfair dismissal. Those two matters have been joined together, and the matter has gone through conciliation, and now it's going to go through arbitration. To answer your question, are we confident on the basis of the 10 charges that the organization has against Mr. Mulauzi?
Yes.
The prospects for the organization are quite, we're looking at success.
I'm not sure if I'm able to steal another minute, because I wanted to talk about Mr. Mulauzi, because initially he had been facing about 4 charges, if my memory serves me correct, and then was informed he was facing 10 charges. Mr. July, very quickly.
Yes, the first charge had to do with Infonomics. The second part had to do with Sekela Tlabisa. Remember, he was the head of that. Can I add it quickly?
Very, very quickly, Mr. July.
23rd July, the hearing takes place. Mr. Mulauzi doesn't show up. He says he's sick, he's not in a position to see, he's driven to hospital. To the doctor. He can't see. On the 24th, we go and argue the point whether the certificate that was provided, whether is it sufficient enough to prove that Mr. Mulauzi is ill-disposed. It turned out that he was not. Guess what happened on the 27th? He has got an unfair labor practice matter. Mr. Mulauzi can see now. He goes to the...
So what are those charges? You jump from 4 to 10 charges that Mulauzi was facing.
Remember.
Of course, you're talking about 2 names of particular companies, yes?
Yes. We've got the charge sheet here. We can read the charges to you, if you want.
Can we just keep it very brief? Yes.
One of the charges has to do with the gross dishonesty in the appointment of Infonomics. The other one has to do with, there was a treasury note which was issued in May 2016. And this treasury note is very clear that SABC cannot appoint a service provider which is not in the panel of the SABC. If you want a service provider but it's not in the panel of the SABC, you must go to CSD, which is a central database, which is held by Treasury. What happened in this case, Infonomics was not there. Infonomics was appointed on the 15th of November 2016, right?
Yes.
But it was registered on the 18th of November 2016. And Mr. Mulauzi is the head of that. And one of the requirements is that Mr. Mulauzi must make sure that the treasury note is included, or you amend the policies of SABC according to the treasury note.
Yeah.
There's also an issue of the prepayment, which took place, which Treasury does not allow that. You cannot get services. And when you look at the reasons that are provided to SIU as to what is the reason why these guys were paid upfront, you get various reasons. One is this SMME. 2, they were needed for startup, which is an infrastructure.
Yep.
3 is because SABC did not have money. These guys did not trust, which is Infonomics, did not trust SABC, and therefore they had to be paid upfront.
Mr. Sandile July, who was the initiator of the disciplinary hearing for 2 former SABC employees who have accused the SABC of firing them because they knew too much about the controversial security deal here at the public broadcaster, as well as Mr. Jonathan Tekiso, who is the Group Executive of Human Resources here at the corporation. Thank you very much to you both for joining us. Let's take a short break here on The Full View.